Don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you.
And welcome back to the famous bar here in the Kingdom of the Geek. Here to talk more stuff about as I look at stuff that throws off my ADD. I don't know if I have ADD. It's just a thing to say now, I think. Guess it's become the word to use for being distracted. Not to insult anyone who does have ADD, just seem to become, has the way the words become. But I digress. Today is going to be story time. And before I get into the story time, I'm going to do what some of the bigger, everybody else seems to do on YouTube is, remember, if you liked it, give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, maybe tell a friend, maybe tell an enemy, you know, the type of person you inflict on people. Alright, and this is again been brought on by 2020 and started just kind of reminiscing. I do that a lot. But the year is 1988, and a very young geek finally graduating from high school a year late. I was really lazy. Gets his first taste of what will become a lifelong obsession, and that long life obsession is conventions. This convention in particular, Dixie Track. Now, there've been cons forever. I think if you look it up, there've probably been cons. I know one of the first times they showed Star Trek was at a science fiction convention. They basically took it and showed it to a crowd, which at first they thought busted because once the credits rolled, there was silence. And then they realized what the people were doing was reading the credits, and then busted out in applause. They were actually that enthralled into what they saw. Now, but they're not as big as what you kind of see now. Cons as I've gone have gotten bigger and bigger. Dixie Trek was a Star Trek centric con. They did have other guests. It's usually, there have been a few of these. Basically, it was Star Trek themed, and then it'd have one or two other guests from other genres. Mine, which was May of 1988, consisted of Nicholas Courtney, who was also known as the Brigadier from Doctor Who, which was another one of my things I had gotten into since I was at military school. I got introduced to Doctor Who. Julie Newmar, who was one of two of the TV Catwomen. I want to say the third one was only in the movie. I think it was only Julie Newmar and Eartha Kitt were the only two that actually showed up on the TV show. And Jonathan Frakes. Now, we have to remember, this is, again, May of 88. Next Gen had not even finished the first season yet. I want to say there was going to be one or two more episodes. I want to say there was only one episode left. And he came out, he had his beard, didn't even know, they hadn't even seen him in the beard yet. He didn't even know if he was going to be able to keep it. I mean, that's how, this was packed ballroom. It was interesting because they didn't clear everybody in the ballroom, so I got to sit there and see three back-to-back guests. I think we walked in on Julie Newmar. Then they just basically rotated Mr. Courtney in next, and then Frakes was right after that. And then this was my first convention, really. It's also when I joined Starfleet, which is a international Star Trek fan club that basically each club is a different starship. And this was actually the what would become or was becoming the USS Republic, which is the Atlanta chapter of Starfleet. This was them changing over because basically, get a little thing. When you start a chapter, you have to be, you basically start off as a shuttle from another chapter, and that chapter has to be so many miles away. And so they had basically finished up their part as the shuttlecraft and was becoming that weekend the USS Republic. In fact, they got a huge boost that weekend because it was packed. Part of that was there used to be a personality on Atlanta Channel 46 named Demi Moore, who was a huge Trekkie, and they were doing commercials for Dixie Trek on Channel 46. And this place was so packed that it was one of those times when the air was running full speed, but you couldn't tell because there was just so many bodies. The other thing I kind of find this interesting, and this is other Bill trivia, is this hotel where we went to, which was a Marriott, that's kind of off in a neighborhood, although you can see it off one of the major interstates in the Atlanta area, would actually focus several other conventions later in this Bill's life. But it was really fascinating because I think it was the first time I was around that many people with the same inclinations. They were all fans, and there were every shape, size, color, sex, everything. It was the first time I've had, you see a dealer's room. Now again, 88, there was no internet. If you wanted something really interesting, fan-wise, you either had to go to a local comic book shop that would also carry other stuff, or you would have to mail order, and you have to find where this stuff is, or be in an area where the shop that sold it was. Nowadays, dealers from it's cool, but it's not as big of a deal as it was back then because now you could get their business card and get stuff off the internet. So in 88, when you walk in there and you see there are patches and t-shirts and, backdated comics and, patterns to make uniforms and things to go on the uniforms. It just blows the little geek's mind. Books, everything. This was also, went for the day, ended up staying very late because one of the things I wanted to see was a showing of, it was a touring copy of George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. And this wasn't a theatrical release. This was like, I want to say, the second to last edit. It was the full movie. They hadn't done some editing. There were some parts in it where there were scenes where they were elongated, where there was more to it. The one that always comes to mind as when our four heroes leave in the helicopter. There is they're having a discussion of who they're leaving behind in the city. That's elongated in there. The final fight in the mall is longer. It doesn't have the has like the placeholder soundtrack. It's just very, the beginning of the movie doesn't, if you watch the actual theatrical, when you see the woman wake up, all you hear is the music and you see the bustling of You see the bustling in the newsroom. Where in this cut, you hear the chaos that's going on around them. So this was, so from there, especially being now a member of Starfleet, I was hooked. And every convention from then became, I got something new. Um, Fantasy Fair, Atlanta Fantasy Fair was the next one. Was the first time I got into like a smaller room with a guest. Spending time in the video, this is where I actually got to see The Princess Bride for the first time. Was at Atlanta Fantasy Fair. I got to sit in a small room and listen to the actor who was Barnabas Collins from Dark Shadows, the original Dark Shadows, which was one of my mom's favorite shows as a teenager. She'd tell me stories about running home from school to watch this daytime soap opera that had a vampire in it. The next one after that was Dragon Con. Dragon Con was my first time doing a costume. It was also my first time going to more than one day at a convention. Where you literally had to find, here's all these different things. I think Dragon Con may have also been one of the first times I went to a fan panel. It had nothing to do with guests. To be honest, I only knew who one or two of the guests were at the time. But this was like Dragon Con's second year. Because Dragon Con started in I was at 87. I was there in 88. So I mean, there were one or two authors I kind of knew, and a video game guy. And I can never remember his real name. I knew him from Lord British. The main reason I knew is because I had a friend who basically I now know wrote fanfic that involved him, and it was about this universe that lived in a watch, and it just combined all these different people from different stories living in this thing. So as I look back into it, I had a friend who was, I knew what fanfiction was before I knew what fanfiction was. The next after that was Magnus Opus Con. It was my first out-of-state con. It was my first, I think, all weekend, where I was there all weekend long. It's also the first time I actually got an autograph, and I got it from Sylvester McCoy, the seventh Doctor. And it was really nice because I didn't know what, I really knew nothing of, you go line up and you buy a headshot and he signs it and you shake hands. I happened to be sitting there waiting for my friends who were getting ready to drive back from Greenville, South Carolina, back to Atlanta. And there he was wandering around he was talking to a couple of people about Civil War reenactment. And I asked him to sign the back of my badge. Because at this point, badges were basically little paper slips that slid into cheap plastic cases. These little things, they were about credit card size, and they were made to where you would slide your credential in and you pin it to your thing. I don't even think they have what people mainly know what a badge is now. The big laminated backstage pass looking thing. Originally he balked and was like, I'm getting ready to do my signing in about an hour ago. Well, me and my friends are getting ready to leave, and he signed the back of my badge. It was fantastic. And then from there it just kind of grew. And the more and more I went, the more and more I absolutely loved it. Oh, and Magnus Opus Con was also my first introduction to the party portion of con. The people that I went with, that I went to con with, were also people who would throw convention parties. They would actually, theirs were always kind of private. They would come up with some kind of funky theme, come up with some kind of invite only. I mean, this first time they called it WhoopieCon, and you got a badge, which was hilarious because this is the way security kind of was back in the day. Um, I did not have a badge for Friday night, but yet I wandered through convention all night wearing the WhoopieCon badge. I didn't buy my badge. I didn't buy my badge until the next day. I was there all weekend. I think I paid for a day. But then again, I think we left early Sunday, and this was back when, con was over by 2 on a Sunday. The dealer's room may be open. Depending on the con, the dealer's room might even be open to the public, just to let people know. There are a few cons that still do that. I want to say Chattacon does it, or did it. And that's the only one I know that I've been to where they'd open it up to the public. So if you were just someone who wanted to come in and look at see if you could buy something, help the dealers kind of sell a little bit more wares before they leave. Kind of a nice thing to do. But yeah, after that, I didn't get to go back until like 91 because I had to move back in with my parents. Stupid. A teenager being out on his own and trying to keep up with other people and not going to work and not having any money. And so that happened. And then as I got back into it, started going back. And the thing is that Dragon Con was the main one we ended up going to. Because at one point in Atlanta, there wasn't really any other conventions. Because the people who ran Dixie Track just kind of got burnt out. Ended up decorporating and basically selling the IP to Dragon Con. Which then they promptly, I think, ran it for a year and then disbanded. When the Fantasy Fair just fizzled out. I mean, I think the last 2 conventions they held, they couldn't get the hotel to themselves. I remember going to my the second one I ended up going to, they were having to share it with a Black Baptist convention. And by share, I mean one of the big ballrooms was cut in half, and you had the goers from the Baptist convention going into one half of it, and the con goers going into the other half of it. And then, it was like the other ones were all out of town, except Magnus Opus Con towards the end, but Magnus kind of got a very bad reputation. Part of it earned itself. Part of it was brought on by rival con stuff, I guess. I was in it enough to know what was going on, but not in it enough to have every detail. Because at one point, there were 2 conventions that were starting to get big about the same time. And that was Magnus Opus Con and Dragon Con. They were about the same size. It looked like they were doing about the same size. They were getting about the same type of stars, because back then, let's put it this way, the Hall of Fame was always jokingly referred to as the Hall of Shame, because these were people who, the stereotype was there that, yeah, this was someone who was, I think the best they get is if you go watch Galaxy Quest, and it's the actor, the guy who was crewman 47 in a convention, and that was his claim to fame. And that was what was going on. You occasionally would get the old Star Trek, like the old Star Trek people. And of course, they were all like, oh, look, that's all they can do is just go to conventions. They're not doing anything else. But then at some point, Magnus Opus Con kind of shot itself in the foot because it decided to run the same time as Dragon Con. I want to say it was right before the Olympics in Atlanta. and it just there wasn't much left to it after that. It slowly kind of fizzled. Um, yeah, I want to say a couple of years, no, I want to say a handful of years later, it was gone. And then it was just Dragon Con, and that was the one. That's what got me so hooked into it. Is because I guess it was the only one, but it was so much fun because there was the party atmosphere, because it was, you had the people that you could just sit around and start a random conversation with, and that's why I fell in love with conventions, or have fallen in love with conventions. I still love my conventions. I still love going to Dragon Con and Chattacon and what Anacrocon when it was still going on, and now Frolicon, which is a different beast of the same sort, a different a horse of a different color, but it's the same kind of atmosphere. It's kind of how it feels. Um, I know I had about a 3 year break where I didn't go to any conventions. Just again, shit happening. And when coming back in '81, it was almost like I hadn't left, because it was still kind of that. But I think I had changed enough to where I started doing things differently. I wasn't a part of the same kind of party crew I used to be with. I was kind of with people, but I was on my own. And so I started doing a little more, going to panels that were interesting, um, and wandering around by myself, going to concerts, helping out with my friends who were DJing, um, costuming a little bit more, especially once I started dating the web slave. Started costuming a lot more, because taking her to her first one was it even renewed my love of cons. Taking her that first one, taking to her first Dragon Con, and we're in the lobby of the Hyatt waiting on a friend to come down from their room, because we had just come down to get our badges and have dinner, and then we were going to go back and come. We were coming back. The way we used to do it is we'd go down on Thursdays, because they would do early batches. Not like they do it now. They'd start about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and you'd come down and get your badge, and you would get it, and it was a small thing, and then you'd have people who would hang around and do the bars or go get dinner, and there was nothing really else to do, nothing going on except for getting your badge early. And I think it mainly was supposed to be for people who were coming into town. And then from there, that is organically how Dragon Con has become a 5-day convention. Is the fact that more and more people started showing up early and getting their badge and hanging around going, what's there to do? And then it starts off as like, yeah, you know what, let's get a couple of extra bands and throw them on Thursday, just for shits and giggles. And now the badge line opens at 8 a.m. and there's a blood drive, and there are the panels start about 6, and there are parties, and there are seminars if you want to pay extra to go to the seminar. But it was that first Thursday taking Alicia to the con, and we're waiting for our friend, and this wasn't even like it is now, where there are people wandering around, or even later. There were maybe us, costume here, costume there, but she was vibrating. Like she was about to put herself through the floor, because she was going to she was going to go full flash and just go straight through the floor. She was vibrating so much about how excited she was finally to be at Dragon Con. And we still kind of feel that. I mean, it's hard to sleep the night before. We're starting to show up on Wednesdays now, because We really don't want to miss much. We don't want to have to deal with getting down there on a Thursday with the huge crowd and not and we've added things like we give blood. Um, we have a ritual. Thursday, at some point by the end of the night, we're at Trader Vic's drinking Mai Tais, smoking cigars, wearing our fezzes. And it it no matter what, walking through those hotel, because we do overflow hotels sometimes, and even getting there, that's the kind, we're like, okay, we're here, but we're not really here yet. It's walking through the it's walking through the revolving door at the Hyatt and walking into that wide open lobby and being hit with the sound of so many people being in a place, seeing that martini glass, seeing people hugging each other, greeting each other, being in costume, and it hits you with that home vibe that no matter what's been going on during the year, no matter what kind of shit you've dealt with, you walk through those doors and you're home. It may take you a little bit to find the people that you really know. The ones that you don't greet with a handshake or a, hey, how's it going? No, the people that you run into each other hugging and humping each other. The friends that will attack you from behind because they know you're not going to turn around and punch them. Because you are that happy to see them. Again, sitting in the smoking area, flask in hand, having a random conversation, and it could be about anything. It could be about, just random, talking, meeting people, and they may not remember you the next day, but you had a hell of a couple of minutes just talking to someone. Or being in costume and being stopped, especially when you're like in costume and you're getting stopped by someone else in that costume and they stop you and say you look beautiful. You get that kind of stuff. That look was for the web slave who's hiding her head right now on the couch listening to me talk like this, because that actually did happen to her and I have to remind her of it all the I think she gave me the finger. I just wasn't watching. But yeah, I think that's why. I know it's for the best because of 2020. And I know every convention is trying their best. And it helps to a point. They had me, bawling like a baby at the end of the live stuff at Dragon Con at the end of the stuff they did this year. Con drop is a real thing. And I really hope this is something that never goes away. I know we're in a weird cycle right now. And the pauses are real, and I hope she keeps this into the end. It's hard to. A world without conventions for me is a world not really living. I know that sounds stupid. I know a lot of people, well, there are other things that go on. It's like, yeah, but no. I mean, I do love my friends, and I am someone who, you give me a couple hours around my friends, and I feel energized for the week. Whenever we've had our parties, even a small get together, even if it's just we've had a couple of people all go out to dinner, you know, or go to go see dueling pianos at a bar, or sitting around a fire, after everybody's gone to go see a movie, and you just don't want that experience to kind of end. You just still want to keep hanging out. So someone's like, hey, let's not just get together to go to the movies. How about we all meet out back in my house and we'll set up the fire pit? Which are basically small doses of convention life. I mean, that's basically what it is. It's hanging out with your friends is just when you go to Dragon Con or you go to any convention, hanging out with several thousands of your friends. Again, that's why it makes it interesting, getting into, again, a random conversation, having something going on. And I think that's pretty much it. I know it's kind of, I just kind of wanted to get this off my chest. And that's, just so you know, this is pretty much what the YouTube channel is going to be. If you're wondering how everything's a little bit. This is just stuff I just want to get off. And talk to someone other than making the web slave listen to me rant. And I'm sure at some point she's ready just to knock me on the head and tell me to shut up. Which is funny because she's having to sit here and listen to me, and she's going to have to edit this. Because I don't know how to edit. So, on that note, if you love us, if you hate us, if you want to tell me how wrong I am about conventions, leave comments down below. Like, subscribe. Shoot us an email at kinkyandthegeek at gmail.com. And, yeah, be good. Or be good at it.